Cowboy, what are you doing here? Do you want to stay near me tonight?" The sun was low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the little town that seemed frozen in time. The streets were quiet, with only the occasional car passing by, kicking up small clouds of dust from the old, cracked pavement. The shops along Main Street looked almost the same as they had years ago, their wooden signs swinging gently in the warm evening breeze. Windows reflected the last rays of sunlight, and the faint smell of fresh bread from the bakery drifted in the air. It was peaceful in a way that made the heart ache if you remembered it from before. He walked slowly, boots clicking against the pavement, each step echoing softly in the empty street. His jacket, worn and a little faded, brushed against his arms as he moved. There was a calmness to him, but also a quiet weight, like the kind of weariness only life could give. He hadn't planned to come back here. The town held memories, some he wished he could forget, some that made him smile despite the pain. And yet, somehow, his feet had carried him to this familiar place without a clear reason. The cafe on the corner was just as he remembered it. Its brick walls had darkened over time, and the windows were slightly foggy, but it still had the same charm. A few tables were arranged outside, though none of them were occupied. Inside, the smell of coffee and baked goods mixed with something comforting, a scent that felt like home even after so many years. He paused for a moment, looking at the door, unsure if he should go in. Every instinct told him that walking inside might stir emotions he wasn't ready to face. Yet curiosity, and perhaps a little hope, pushed him forward. As he entered, the bell above the door jingled softly, announcing his arrival. The cafe was warm and quiet, the low hum of conversation replaced by the clinking of cups and the faint sound of a radio playing soft music in the background. He scanned the room slowly, taking in the familiar details. The counter where the barista always worked with a smile, the chairs that had squeaked under his weight during long afternoons of studying, the pictures on the wall of past events in the town. Everything seemed the same, yet subtly different, like a memory that had shifted with time. And then he saw her. She was sitting at a small table by the window, her hands wrapped around a warm mug, her gaze lost in thought. Something about the way the light fell on her face made her look both familiar and changed, like a photograph that had aged but still captured a moment perfectly. She looked up suddenly, as if she had sensed him without knowing why. Her eyes widened, and a soft, surprised voice escaped her lips. "Cowboy, what are you doing here?" Those words struck him more deeply than he expected. He had heard her voice in his memory countless times, but hearing it now, spoken with genuine surprise, felt different. It was like the years melted away, leaving just that instant between them. He didn't respond immediately. He simply allowed a small smile to form on his lips, the kind of smile that carried both apology and relief. He hadn't planned to see her, and yet here she was, the reason the town had always felt like more than just buildings and streets. She gestured toward the chair across from her, and he moved to sit, each step deliberate, as if testing the waters of a familiar yet uncertain connection. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sounds of the cafe, the faint hum of the radio, and the occasional clatter of a cup seemed to exist around them but not touch them. It was a quiet bubble in the middle of a busy world, a space where the past could meet the present without rushing. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, measured, and carried the weight of the years spent away. "I was passing through," he said softly, though the words felt inadequate. How could he explain that it wasn't just passing through? That he had returned because of the pull of memories, because the town and the people in it had never truly left his heart. He knew that words could not fully capture the reasons, not even close. She nodded slowly, studying him, noticing the subtle changes, how his hair had grown slightly longer, how his eyes carried a quiet depth that had not been there before, how his hands resting on the table seemed steadier yet somehow more careful. She remembered the boy he used to be, full of reckless energy and laughter that filled the air, and she realized that the man before her had grown into something both familiar and new. "I didn't expect to see you here," she admitted, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "It's been a long time." "Yes," he said, a small chuckle escaping him. "Too long." For a moment silence returned, but it was no longer awkward. It was a silence filled with understanding, with the recognition that both of them carried pieces of the past that could never be erased. Memories of late-night conversations, shared laughter, and quiet moments that neither had thought about in years floated between them like invisible threads, tying them together in ways neither could ignore. He looked around the cafe, then back at her. "Everything looks the same," he said, "but somehow it feels different." She smiled faintly, a mixture of nostalgia and realization. "People change," she said. "Places don't."
He nodded, understanding exactly what she meant.
The town had stayed the same. The buildings had aged, but the people had grown, changed, and carried the weight of their experiences. And yet, sitting across from her, he felt a strange sense of comfort. Some connections didn't fade, no matter the distance or time. Some people remained etched in your life, like indelible marks, and she was one of them. Their conversation began slowly, cautious at first, as they navigated the years of absence between them. They talked about simple things, the weather, the small changes in town, who had moved away, who had stayed, but gradually the words became more personal. He shared stories of his life outside the town, the struggles he had faced, the lessons he had learned. She listened attentively, her eyes never leaving his face, offering subtle nods and soft smiles that encouraged him to continue. She, in turn, spoke of the years she had spent here, of the challenges she had faced, and the ways she had grown. There was a strength in her voice that hadn't been there before, a quiet resilience that made him respect her even more. And yet beneath it all there was the same warmth, the same spark of the person he had once known. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the cafe lights flickered on, the world outside seemed to pause. For those few hours it felt as though time had reversed itself, bringing them back to a place where life was simpler, where connections were raw and unfiltered. He realized that coming back wasn't about nostalgia or curiosity alone. It was about confronting the past, facing the emotions he had left behind, and perhaps finding a way to make sense of what had been lost. By the time they left the cafe walking side by side into the cool evening air, the silence between them was no longer empty. It was comfortable, filled with the weight of understanding and the promise of what could come next. He didn't know how long he would stay, or what the future held, but for the first time in years, he felt a sense of belonging, rooted not just in the town, but in the presence of someone who had never truly left his heart. And as they parted ways for the night, with a soft wave and lingering glance, he realized that some meetings were not mere coincidences. Some encounters were meant to remind you of who you were, who you had become, and what was still possible. That night, as he walked back to the quiet streets of the town, he carried with him a mixture of hope, reflection, and the faint, undeniable excitement of what might come next. The evening air was cool, carrying the faint scent of flowers from the small gardens that lined the quiet streets. They walked side by side, not saying much at first, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that allows people to think, to remember, and to feel things without interruption. The town was familiar yet different, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. Every corner, every lamppost, every familiar shop brought back memories, some sweet, some bittersweet. He glanced at her, noticing the way her hair caught the last streaks of sunlight, how her eyes seemed to hold both warmth and something deeper, something unspoken. He wondered how much she had changed, how much life had shaped her since the days he had left. She walked with a quiet confidence now, but he remembered her as the girl who used to chase dreams with laughter in her eyes and a spark that lit up any room. The years had added layers to her, but the core of who she was remained. They reached the small park where they had spent countless hours as children and teenagers. The swings creaked gently in the evening breeze, and the fountain in the center reflected the fading light, sending little ripples across the water. He remembered bringing her here after school, sharing secrets and dreams, and how carefree life had felt in those moments. Now, as they stood there, those memories felt almost surreal, like echoes from another world. "I can't believe it's been so long," she said softly, breaking the silence. Her voice carried a mixture of nostalgia and curiosity. "I never imagined I would see you again, not like this, not here." He nodded, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets. Neither did I, he admitted. Life, it takes us places we never expect. Sometimes it's far away from the people we care about the most. She smiled faintly, but there was a sadness in her eyes. I wondered about you every day, she confessed. Where you were, what you were doing, if you ever thought about this town at all. He looked down at the ground, the memory of leaving rushing back like a tide.
I thought about it, he said quietly.
More than I realized. Leaving wasn't easy. I thought I had to go to find myself, to figure things out. But it didn't feel right being away from everything I knew. From you. Her gaze softened, and she reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear.
I stayed, hoping you'd come back someday, she admitted.
Even when it seemed impossible. There was a pause, a moment where the world seemed to stop, leaving only the two of them standing in the middle of the park. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faint laughter of children playing in the distance. It was a reminder that life moved on. But some connections, some people, could never be replaced. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words before he spoke again. I left because I was afraid, he said. Afraid of failing, afraid of losing everything. Even you.
I thought distance would make it easier, but it only made me realize what I had left behind.
Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and she looked down at the ground trying to steady herself. You can't imagine how hard it was not knowing, she whispered. Not knowing if you were safe, if you were happy, if you even remembered me at all. He reached out, gently taking her hand in his. The touch was familiar and grounding, a reminder of the bond they had once shared. I never stopped remembering, he said, his voice firm, yet tender. Every place I went, every step I took, you were there, in some way. I just didn't know how to come back. The park, with its quiet streets and gentle lights, became a sanctuary for their conversation. They walked along the paths, sharing small details of their lives, filling in the gaps of years spent apart. He spoke of the towns he had visited, the people he had met, and the lessons he had learned. She shared her experiences, the challenges she had faced, and the ways she had grown stronger over time. Despite the years of separation, there was a rhythm to their conversation, a natural flow that made it seem as though no time had passed at all. Laughter mixed with reflection, and moments of silence were filled with understanding, rather than awkwardness. It was clear that their connection had never truly disappeared. It had only been waiting patiently for this moment. They stopped at the edge of a small pond, the water shimmering in the dim light. He watched his reflection and then hers, noticing how different yet how familiar everything seemed. Do you ever think about what might have happened if I hadn't left? He asked, almost hesitantly. She turned to him, a small smile tugging at her lips. Sometimes, she admitted, but I try not to dwell on it. Life is what it is, and we can't change the past. But we can choose what happens next. He nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief. It was rare to find someone who understood the complexities of both distance and connection, someone who could acknowledge the past without letting it control the present. He realized that this conversation, this moment, was a chance to rebuild trust, to heal old wounds, and perhaps to create something new from what had been left behind. As night fell, the stars began to appear in the sky, twinkling softly above them. The cool night air carried the faint scent of grass and flowers, and the town seemed almost magical under the soft glow of the streetlights. They walked slowly, savoring the quiet beauty of the evening, knowing that these moments were rare and precious. At one point he stopped and looked at her, his expression serious but gentle. I don't want to rush anything, he said. I want to be honest with you. I've missed you more than I can say, and I don't want to let more time pass without trying to make things right. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of hope and caution. I've missed you too, she said softly. But we can't ignore the past. We have to face it, together. He reached out and held her hand again, feeling the warmth and comfort that came with such a simple gesture. Then let's face it, he said. one step at a time. They continued walking through the quiet streets, sharing memories and dreams, laughing at small jokes, and sometimes falling into thoughtful silence. Each step brought them closer to understanding. Each word helped bridge the gap of years spent apart. It was a slow, delicate process, but it felt natural, as though they had always been meant to find their way back to each other. By the time they returned to the small cafe where their evening had begun, the world outside was dark, but inside there was a sense of warmth and familiarity. The memories of the day, the conversations, and the quiet moments lingered in the air like a soft, comforting melody. They knew that the night was not the end of their story, but the beginning of something tentative and fragile, something worth exploring. He looked at her, feeling a sense of gratitude and wonder. "Thank you for letting me come back," he said quietly. "I don't know what the future holds, but I'm glad I'm here now." She smiled, a mix of relief and affection in her expression. "I'm glad you're here too," she replied. "Let's see where this goes together." As they parted for the night, each carrying the memories of their conversation and the hope of what might come next, the town seemed alive in a new way. The quiet streets, the gentle lights, and the familiar sights all reminded them that some connections never truly fade. They endure, waiting for the right time to return, to remind us of who we are, what we've lost, and what we can still build. That night, as he walked back through the streets, he felt a sense of peace that had eluded him for years. The past had returned, not as a burden, but as a guide, showing him the way forward. And somewhere in the quiet town, she too felt a sense of hope, knowing that life had brought them back together for a reason. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter. The air felt a little warmer, and the memories of the past mingled with the possibilities of the future. In that moment, the world felt full of quiet magic, and both of them understood that this was only the beginning of a journey that neither time nor distance could ever erase. The night had grown quiet. The town settled into a calm that only comes after the sun disappears behind the horizon. Street lights cast a gentle golden glow over the empty roads, reflecting softly in the windows of old houses and shops. The air was cool and crisp, carrying faint hints of blooming flowers from the gardens tucked along narrow lanes. It was the kind of night that made every sound, every whisper, every movement seem sharper, more meaningful. For him and her walking side by side, it was the perfect backdrop for conversations that were long overdue. They strolled along the familiar streets, letting the rhythm of their footsteps guide them. Neither was in a hurry. The evening had a softness to it, a pause in time that allowed thoughts and emotions to surface naturally. He looked around, noticing small details he had forgotten. The way the corner store sign had faded slightly, the cracks in the pavement that seemed deeper than he remembered, the gentle sway of tree branches under the night sky. It was a town frozen in memory yet alive with subtle changes, much like the people who had lived there. She glanced at him, her eyes catching the dim streetlights. "It's strange," she said quietly. "Seeing you here after all this time. It feels unreal, in a way." He nodded, a soft smile playing on his lips.
I know. I've thought about this night for years, never knowing if it would ever come true.
Coming back wasn't easy, but I think I needed to see you, to face the memories that never left me. They walked in silence for a few moments, allowing the night to wrap around them. The cool air brushed against their faces, and the faint rustle of leaves added a gentle music to their steps. He thought about all the years he had spent away, the places he had visited, and the life he had built. None of it felt as significant as the moments he spent here, in this town, with her. Time had changed them both, but the connection between them remained, subtle yet undeniable. "I always wondered," she said after a pause, her voice soft but steady, "what it would be like if you came back. If we ever talked again, like nothing had changed. Would it feel right, or would it feel wrong?" He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his answer. "I wondered the same thing," he admitted. "But being here now, I realize that it doesn't feel wrong at all. It feels like it should have happened a long time ago." She smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting the streetlights. "I guess some things can't be rushed. Some things need time to grow, even when they start as memories." He nodded in agreement. Exactly, and some connections. They don't disappear. They wait. They wait until the right time comes. As they continued walking, he found himself opening up in ways he hadn't expected. He spoke of the fears that had haunted him, the doubts that had kept him moving from place to place, and the moments when he had longed for the familiarity of home. Each word was spoken carefully, honestly, carrying with it the weight of years and experience. She listened intently, never interrupting, letting him speak in his own time. When it was her turn, she shared her story, the challenges she had faced, the ways she had grown, the moments she had spent wondering if he would ever return. Her voice was calm, yet there was an underlying vulnerability that he had always loved. It reminded him of why he had cared for her so deeply, even from afar. She had faced life with courage, resilience, and strength, and hearing her words made him admire her even more. They stopped at the edge of a small bridge that overlooked a quiet river. The water reflected the moon and stars, creating a shimmering path that seemed to stretch endlessly. It was peaceful here, away from the town's soft hum, and it allowed them to be completely honest with each other. I was afraid, he admitted quietly, staring at the reflection of the stars in the water. Afraid that coming back would be too late, that things would be different in ways I couldn't fix. She turned to him, her eyes soft and understanding. Life isn't perfect, she said gently. Things change. People change. But it doesn't mean we can't find a way to connect again. We just have to try. He reached for her hand, holding it lightly, feeling the warmth and comfort of her touch. I want to try, he said simply. I've spent too many years running, hiding, and avoiding what really matters. I don't want to do that anymore. Her hand tightened slightly around his, a subtle yet reassuring gesture. Neither do I, she said. We've waited long enough to be honest with ourselves. Maybe it's time we stop worrying about what could go wrong and focus on what could go right. The night seemed to grow quieter as they stood there, hand in hand facing each other. The river flowed gently beneath them, carrying with it a sense of calm and renewal. The stars above shone with a quiet brilliance, as if encouraging them to embrace this moment fully. It was a night that demanded honesty, reflection, and courage, and they were giving it willingly. He spoke again, his voice steady and heartfelt. I left because I didn't know how to handle life, how to handle the feelings I had, especially for you. I thought distance would make it easier, but it didn't. All it did was make me realize what I lost when I left. Her eyes glistened, and she looked away briefly, the moonlight catching the tears she didn't speak about. It wasn't easy for me either, she admitted. I missed you, even when I tried not to. I wondered if you even remembered me. I wondered if I should just move on. He shook his head gently, bringing her gaze back to his. I never stopped remembering, he said softly. You were always there, in the back of my mind, in every town I visited, in every choice I made. I just didn't have the courage to come back sooner. For a long moment they stood there letting their words settle. There was no rush, no pressure, just a quiet acknowledgement of the past and the hope for what could come next. It was a rare and precious moment, one that neither of them wanted to break with unnecessary words or actions. The conversation gradually shifted to lighter topics, the small joys and challenges of everyday life, the funny moments that had occurred since they last saw each other, and the small changes in the town they both remembered. Laughter mixed with reflection, and even in the quiet pauses, there was a sense of connection that had only grown stronger over time. As the night deepened, the world seemed to fade around them, leaving only the two of them standing on that small bridge, connected by shared memories and unspoken understanding. He realized that this wasn't just a chance to reconnect. It was a chance to heal, to rebuild trust, and to consider what the future might hold if they faced it together. I don't want to leave again, he said quietly, almost to himself. I don't want to make the same mistakes. She looked at him, her expression soft but determined.
Then don't, she said simply.
We don't have to rush, but we can move forward, together. He nodded, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. The past had been heavy, but now, standing here with her, he felt lighter, freer, and more ready than ever to face whatever came next. It wasn't about forgetting the past or pretending it didn't matter. It was about acknowledging it and choosing to move forward despite it. They continued their walk through the quiet streets, occasionally stopping to admire the soft glow of the streetlights or the distant sound of an owl calling from the trees. Each step reinforced the sense that they were taking this journey together, not alone, and that whatever had been lost over the years could be rebuilt with patience, honesty, and care. By the time they returned to her house, the night had grown deep and still. The air was crisp, filled with a faint scent of earth and flowers, and the town was wrapped in a quiet embrace. They paused at the doorstep, neither wanting the night to end, yet both understanding that some moments needed to be savored rather than rushed. "I'm glad we talked tonight," he said softly, his hand still lightly holding hers. "It feels right. For the first time in a long time, it feels right." She smiled, a mix of warmth and relief in her expression. "Me too," she said. "And this is just the beginning, isn't it?" He nodded, a small, hopeful smile forming. "Yes, just the beginning." As they said goodnight, there was a sense of quiet promise in the air. The night had given them more than just conversation. It had given them understanding, reconciliation, and the fragile beginnings of a new connection. The past had been acknowledged, the emotions laid bare, and the future opened just enough to invite possibility. And as he walked back through the silent streets, the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if reminding him that some connections, no matter how long they are apart, never truly fade. They wait patiently, ready to return at the right time, bringing with them hope, healing, and the chance for something new to grow. The night was quiet, but it was alive with possibilities. The streets of the town were bathed in the gentle glow of the streetlights, their light reflecting on the pavement and casting long shadows. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of flowers from the small gardens that lined the sidewalks, mingled with the distant aroma of fresh bread from a bakery that never seemed to close on evenings like this. It was one of those nights where everything feels paused, as if the world itself is holding its breath, waiting for something important to happen. They walked side by side, their steps slow and measured. Neither of them felt the need to fill the silence with words. The quiet was comfortable, a companion rather than an interruption. Each step was a reminder that they had come a long way, not just in distance, but in understanding. The past, once heavy and unspoken, now hovered gently between them, acknowledged but no longer a barrier. He glanced at her from time to time, noticing the subtle expressions that passed across her face. There was warmth, curiosity, and a hint of hesitation in her eyes. He knew the hesitation well. It was the kind that comes from years of guarding one's heart, from expecting disappointment to follow hope. But there was something else, too. A quiet courage, a willingness to be present in the moment, even if it brought uncertainty. "Do you remember the summer we spent by the river?" she asked suddenly, breaking the calm. Her voice was soft, almost like a whisper meant for him alone. He smiled at the memory, the warmth of it flooding him unexpectedly. "How could I forget?" he said. "We thought we had all the time in the world back then." She laughed softly, the sound blending with the night air. "We were so young and certain that nothing could ever go wrong. We didn't know life had other plans." "No, we didn't," he agreed, his tone tinged with a mix of nostalgia and regret. "But we learned a lot. Maybe not in the way we expected, but we learned." Their conversation flowed naturally, touching on memories, laughter, and the lessons life had taught them. It was as if the years of separation had been a pause, allowing both of them to grow, and now they were picking up the threads where they had left off. The night seemed to encourage honesty, reflection, and openness, making it easier for them to speak from the heart. As they reached a small park near the edge of town, he stopped and gestured toward a bench under an old oak tree. "Let's sit for a while," he suggested. "I feel like we've got a lot to say, and some of it deserves more than just walking past it." She nodded and sat down beside him, careful to leave a small space between them, though their proximity felt natural and comforting. The moonlight filtered through the branches, creating patterns of light and shadow on the ground. The night was serene, almost sacred, providing a private world where they could speak freely. He took a deep breath, gathering the courage to express the thoughts he had carried for so long. I left because I didn't know how to handle my feelings, he began slowly. Especially the feelings I had for you. I thought that distance would make it easier, that it would help me sort things out, but it didn't. All it did was make me realize how much I had taken for granted. She listened, her eyes fixed on him, absorbing each word. Her hand rested on her lap, fingers occasionally brushing the edge of the bench.
I felt the same, she admitted. I didn't understand why you left, and I tried not to think about it too much. But the truth is, I missed you.
More than I wanted to admit. He reached out slowly, his hand hovering near hers before finally brushing against it. The touch was light, hesitant, yet full of unspoken meaning. I missed you too, he said, his voice soft but steady. And being here now, it feels like a chance to make up for lost time. Not to undo the past, but to see if we can move forward. Her eyes softened, and she turned her hand slightly to meet his. The gesture was small, but it carried a depth of emotion that words could not capture. I want to try, she said, her voice almost trembling with the weight of her honesty. I don't want to live with regrets or what-ifs anymore. If this, us, can work, I want to give it a chance. The night air seemed to wrap around them like a gentle blanket, carrying their words into the quiet streets and distant trees. They sat together talking about fears, hopes, and the uncertainty of the future. They acknowledged the mistakes of the past without letting them define the present. Every sentence was a careful step toward understanding, every glance a reassurance that they were not alone. He spoke of his years away, the places he had been, the people he had met, and the lessons he had learned. Life hasn't been easy, he said, but it has taught me a lot. Mostly, it taught me what really matters, and you've always been a part of that. I didn't see it clearly before, but now I do. She listened, her gaze steady, feeling the sincerity in his words. I've changed too, she said. I've grown stronger, and I've learned to face life on my own, but that doesn't mean I stopped caring about you.
I never did. They talked for hours, the night slipping by unnoticed.
Laughter mingled with tears, reflections with confessions, creating a tapestry of shared experiences and renewed connection. The quiet park became their sanctuary, a place where time slowed down, and the world outside seemed far away. Eventually, the conversation shifted to the present moment, to what they could do now, with the chance to rebuild something meaningful. He looked at her, searching for the right words, feeling a mixture of hope and vulnerability. I don't want this night to end, he said softly. Not because I'm afraid of the future, but because I don't want to leave things unsaid. I want to be honest with you, with myself. She met his gaze, her eyes reflecting the moonlight and the emotion she felt. Then be honest, she whispered. Tell me what's on your mind. He hesitated for a moment, the weight of the question settling in. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm and full of meaning. I don't know what the future holds, he admitted, but I know that I don't want to face it without you. I want to be near you, if you'll let me. Not just tonight, but for however long it takes to see where this goes. Her heart raced at his words. The vulnerability in his voice, the honesty in his eyes, it all made her realize how much she wanted the same thing. She had been strong on her own, but she also knew that some connections were too important to ignore. She wanted to take the chance, to explore the possibilities, to see if the bond between them could grow into something lasting. For a long moment they sat in silence, letting the gravity of the moment sink in. The night was still. The only sounds were the distant rustle of leaves and the gentle flow of a nearby stream. It was a night full of potential, a night that could mark the beginning of something beautiful if they allowed themselves to take the leap. Finally she spoke, her voice soft but steady. Do you want to stay near me tonight? She asked, the question carrying more than just its literal meaning. It was a question about trust, about closeness, about letting the past and the present meet in a way that could shape the future. He looked at her, his heart swelling with a mixture of relief, hope, and affection. He didn't need to think twice. Yes, he said simply. I want to stay near you. Tonight and for as long as you'll let me. She smiled, a sense of peace washing over her. The tension of years apart, the uncertainty, the fear, all of it seemed to dissolve in that moment. They had taken a step together, a step toward understanding, closeness, and the possibility of a shared future. The night carried them forward, a quiet witness to the beginning of something fragile yet promising. They walked back toward her house, their hands brushing together, their shoulders occasionally touching. Each step was deliberate, a reminder that they were moving forward together, not alone. The streets seemed more inviting now, more familiar, and the air felt warmer, filled with the promise of what could come next. By the time they reached her doorstep, the night had grown deeper, the stars shining brightly above them. They paused, reluctant to end the night, but understanding that some moments were meant to be savored, not rushed. Thank you, she said softly, her voice carrying gratitude and emotion. For being honest, for coming back, for staying. He smiled, feeling the weight of her words. Thank you, he replied, for waiting, for trusting, and for letting me be here. I don't take this lightly. As they said goodnight, there was a quiet sense of completion, a feeling that something significant had begun. The night had been a turning point, a moment where honesty, trust, and vulnerability came together to create a connection that neither time nor distance could erase. And as he walked back through the quiet streets, the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if encouraging him to embrace the future with hope and courage. The night had given them more than conversation. It had given them understanding, closeness, and the fragile beginnings of a bond that could grow stronger with each passing day. The night had grown still, the quiet of the town wrapping around everything like a gentle blanket. The stars sparkled overhead, their light reflected in the calm streets and the occasional window, giving the place an almost magical glow. There was a sense of calm, but also a sense of possibility, as if the universe itself had paused to witness the moment. He walked beside her, their steps in quiet harmony, each footfall carrying a mixture of reflection and anticipation. The air was cool, brushing against their faces and ruffling their hair slightly, carrying the subtle scents of the night, flowers from the gardens, the faint smell of earth from nearby fields, and the lingering warmth from the lights of the town. It was the kind of night that made people feel alive, aware of every small detail, every quiet sound, every unspoken feeling. For them, it felt like a chance to start anew, a rare opportunity to turn the page without erasing what had come before. They stopped in front of her house, the familiar structure bathed in the soft glow of the porch light. He looked at it, remembering all the times he had walked past it, imagining the life she led inside, wondering if he would ever return. Now he was here, and the weight of the past seemed lighter, replaced by the hope that had been growing throughout the evening. She turned to him, her expression soft but thoughtful. I can't believe how much has changed, she said quietly. And yet, some things feel exactly the same. He nodded, smiling faintly. Life has a way of moving on, whether we want it to or not. But some connections don't change. They wait for the right time, for the right chance. She looked down at her hands, then back at him, her eyes glistening slightly. I was afraid, she admitted. Afraid that coming back together would be awkward, or that too much time had passed. But now I feel like we've been given another chance, one that we shouldn't waste. He reached for her hand, holding it firmly but gently. We won't waste it, he promised. I don't want to go through life wondering what could have been. I want to be present, to see where this goes, with you. For a long moment they simply stood there, hands intertwined, feeling the quiet strength of the connection that had never truly disappeared. The town around them was peaceful, the distant hum of life softened by the night. It was a perfect pause, a moment where the past, present, and future seemed to meet in harmony. He spoke again, his voice low and steady. I know we can't change the past, and I don't want to, but we can choose what comes next. We can take the time to understand each other, to rebuild what was lost, and maybe create something stronger than before. Her eyes softened and a small smile appeared on her lips.
I want that too, she said. I've waited long enough.
I don't want to wait any longer. They moved inside, the warmth of the house wrapping around them, contrasting with the cool night outside. The familiar scent of her home, books, flowers, and a hint of something baked earlier in the day, made him feel unexpectedly at ease. It was a place of comfort, yet it was also a space where they could be honest with themselves and with each other. As they sat together in the living room, the conversation flowed naturally. They talked about the past, acknowledging mistakes without dwelling on them. They shared dreams for the future, hopes that had been quietly growing in the years apart. Laughter came easily, and so did quiet moments of reflection. Every word, every glance, every small gesture carried meaning. It was the kind of interaction that reminded them why the connection had endured, why it had waited patiently for this moment. He looked at her, feeling a mixture of relief, gratitude, and excitement. I don't want to leave again, he admitted. Not tonight, not tomorrow. I want to be here, fully, if you'll let me. She smiled, her hand resting on his. Then don't leave, she said softly. Stay, and let's take it one step at a time. We don't need to rush, but we can move forward together. The night deepened, but neither of them felt the need to move. They stayed close, talking in quiet tones, sometimes laughing, sometimes simply enjoying the comfort of each other's presence. The walls of the house seemed to hold them in a protective embrace, shielding them from the outside world, allowing them to focus entirely on the bond they had rediscovered. At one point, they stood by the window, looking out at the quiet streets. The moon cast a soft light, highlighting the familiar corners of the town that had witnessed so many of their memories. He pointed to the distant park where they had walked earlier, and they shared a smile, silently acknowledging the journey they had taken together that night. I've learned a lot, he said, his voice thoughtful. Mostly, I've learned what matters. And I've learned that some things, some people, are worth returning to, no matter how far you go. She turned to him, her eyes warm and steady. I've learned the same, she said. Life is unpredictable, but some connections are constant. And I'm glad, so glad, that we found our way back. The hours passed quietly, each moment deepening the sense of closeness between them. They shared stories of their childhood, memories that had been tucked away in the corners of their minds. They spoke of hopes and fears, of dreams and doubts, of the simple yet profound truths that only come out in moments of honesty. Every word was a thread, weaving them together into a tapestry of renewed trust and understanding. Eventually, they settled onto the couch, sitting close enough to feel each other's warmth. The conversation slowed, giving way to comfortable silence, the kind that comes from being completely at ease with someone. He realized that this was the first time in years that he had felt truly at home, not because of the town or the familiar streets, but because of the person sitting beside him. I don't know what tomorrow will bring, he said softly, but I do know that I want to face it with you.
She leaned slightly against him, a gesture of trust and comfort.
And I want that too, she replied. No matter what comes, we'll face it together. The night continued, carrying with it a sense of peace and possibility. They laughed quietly at small things, shared thoughts that had never been spoken aloud, and occasionally fell into silence, content just to be near each other. It was a night of reconciliation, of understanding, and of rediscovery. As dawn approached, the first light of morning softly touched the horizon, casting gentle hues across the sky. The world outside began to wake, but inside they remained in their own quiet bubble, savoring the calm after a night of emotional honesty and connection. They knew that life would continue to challenge them, but they also knew that they would face it together, stronger and more connected than ever. He held her hand tightly, feeling the warmth and reassurance of her presence. This night, it means more than I can say, he murmured. Thank you for letting me stay, for trusting me, for being here. She looked at him, her eyes shining with quiet emotion. And thank you, she said softly, for coming back, for being honest, and for staying. I've never stopped caring, and I never want to." They sat together as the morning light grew stronger, the town slowly coming to life around them. Birds began to sing, and the distant sounds of activity reminded them that the world was moving forward. But for now, in this quiet moment, everything felt right. The past had been acknowledged, the present fully embraced, and the future held endless possibilities. He realized that some journeys take longer than expected, some connections are tested by time and distance, and some people are worth every moment of waiting. And she realized the same, that love, trust, and understanding can endure, even through years of separation and uncertainty. Finally, they rose together, hands still intertwined, ready to face whatever came next. The night had been a turning point, a moment that would forever remain etched in their memories. It was not the end of their story, but the beginning of a new chapter, one written with honesty, patience, and the quiet promise of being there for each other. And as they stepped out into the soft morning light, the town around them seemed to glow with renewed warmth. The streets were familiar, yet everything felt different, full of hope, possibility, and the certainty that some connections, no matter how long they are apart, never truly fade. They walked together now, not just through the town, but through life, carrying with them the lessons of the past, the strength of the present, and the promise of the future. That night, and the morning that followed, became more than a memory. It became a foundation, a quiet reassurance that sometimes the heart knows the way back, that time can heal, and that love, true, patient, enduring love, can always find its way home.